I'll be honest, I did not even know that writing for other people was a thing when I signed
Interesting.
that deal. Um, it took me a long time to even like get into that world, which I'm honestly no longer really a part of.
What's up, Tim?
Hey Adam, how you
How-
doing?
I'm doing well. How are both of you?
Doing great. Thanks for having us again.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say I had you on, but it was over the phone, like in
Yeah.
August 2020. I think is when I looked it up.
Mhm.
We weren't Zoom experts yet, you know.
I don't think anyone was at that point. It was like
Yeah.
trying to figure everything out still. Like, okay, how are we gonna do this? Okay, here's a phone. I remember just buying all this crap trying to figure out how to record over
Yeah,
the internet. I'm sure you guys are in the same boat.
absolutely.
Yeah, I believe you had maybe you had just released some Still Morning, or maybe it was gonna come out. I can't remember.
Yeah, I
I think it
think it
maybe
was
just
in the
before.
lead up, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm
Um,
Yeah,
excited to catch up and see what you guys have been up to since. Obviously, a lot of music, and but I'd also like to just quickly recap kind of on what we spoke about before, as far as like you guys meeting and everything.
sure.
mhm.
Yeah.
Cool. Both from I think you both from Massachusetts area. Is that what I remember?
Yeah, that's right.
Born and bred.
Or
Actually, Eddie's not there anymore, but yeah.
are you still living
Mhm.
there, Tim?
I'm still in Massachusetts. Yep. I'm like I left for a bit, but I'm back. I'm like maybe half an hour from where I grew up. So I haven't flown too far from the old stomping grounds.
Oh, that's cool. What about you, Eddie? Where are you at?
I'm currently in LA. Um,
Oh wow. Do you live in
yeah,
LA now? That's
I
a
do. I do.
voyage.
It's kind of a temporary thing-ish.
Okay.
My wife was actually she's graduating this weekend, but she came out here for grad school. So
Oh, congratulations.
yeah.
Amazing. Well, I recently I moved to Nashville since the last time I talked to you guys. So I moved
Nice.
opposite way from San Diego. But
Mhm.
cool. So yeah, let's just start off again. Eddie, where how did you get into music? I remember you saying you started off, I think, on violin or something.
Yeah, I grew up, you know, my family was all playing different instruments. Neither of my parents did, so I think they tried to get us into it. So I started off in piano and then violin, and I kind of hated both of those things, and then picked up guitar and bass in high school, and like finally fell in love with playing music. Um, but yeah,
Were you in like the school band or anything like that, or just did it as a
yeah, I was
kind of a
in
forced hobby?
the school orchestra growing up, and then some of my buddies were starting a band, and they needed a bass player, so they were like, "It's pretty easy to give you a bass and teach you how," and it's kind of my jumping point there.
Oh, that's cool. What were you guys like? Were you writing originals and playing around, or like
Yeah,
how'd that go?
a little half and half. It was a emo band back then, so
Oh, that's what I love, man.
yeah,
You guys are
that's
an
when my
emo
roots
band?
are
What
from.
like yeah, what bands are you kind of listening to at the time?
It's like Taking Back Sunday, Saves the Day, and that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. And you
Jimmy
guys,
World.
yeah, you went for that. You were kind of that sound at the time.
Yeah,
Amazing.
just
What about I can't remember, Tim, how did you get in music?
I picked it up late, but I started playing guitar in college.
Okay.
Um, so late bloomer. I played in the school band in high school, but I played trumpet and I was pretty bad. Uh, pretty bad at guitar too, but I figured that out. Um, yeah, no, I played it in college just for fun, and then when I graduated, I moved down to New York and started doing. At the time, there was like a pretty serious open mic scene. I don't know if it still exists. It would be a shame if it didn't, but just kind of cut my teeth that way and started writing songs. Kind of somebody found me at an open mic, and then the rest is history.
Oh wow. But
Yeah,
you guys weren't you in a band prior to this one?
yeah. I played in a folk band that I started with some buddies in New York. Eddie was a late. He came into the band kind of as we were not quite as we were disbanding, but kind of in our final phase.
Okay.
And then brief break, and then Eddie and I kind of picked back up as Handsome Ghost.
Okay. And with the folk band, how did you then, Eddie? How did you meet Tim? Like, I mean, through the band, but were you in New York as well?
I wasn't. I was another player that was in the band with Tim. He was an old family friend of mine, and he he had quit his job and was telling me about being in a band. So I felt like kind of bad for him initially. I was like, oh shit, life must really be falling apart. His hair's long now and looks like he hasn't showered for a while. But when I listened to the band, and Tim's always been a really, really strong songwriter. I fell in love with it, and kind of just weaseled my way into that project.
Were you
Weasel's too strong.
Did you play? Were you a bass player in the band?
I was, yeah, bass and guitar.
Okay.
My buddy was violin and bass at different times, so he just kind of filled in wherever I was needed.
That's awesome. And were you, Tim? How long was that band around for?
We were around for a bit. It was probably like 3 or 4 years. I think that's pretty good stretch for a band.
Yeah.
We toured quite a bit. We had a blast. That was a really fun band. We were very green, but yeah, it was fun. I have very fond memories of that time.
I remember you were telling me that you were a teacher down in New York, right?
Yeah, I was teaching and playing music kind of at night and on the weekends. And at that point, it was just like, I loved, I still love it, but it was like, just because it was so new, it was just like every second that I could play in front of people, I did. So I think like I was really, really bad when I started, but if you do enough of those, if you put yourself out there enough, I feel like you kind of trial by fire a little bit. So I figured it out eventually.
So when this band, you started this band, and is that when you quit teaching, or like did you say, let's do this full time? Like, at what point did you dive into just doing the band?
I started to get really into it. The band we were by no means like breaking, but we were playing like big shows in New York, or at least what I thought were big shows. So I was kind of flirting with the idea of quitting teaching, even though I loved it, to pursue the music full time. And I actually got I signed a publishing deal. So that was when I was like, you know what, let's just go for this. And we had 3 guys living off of like 30 grand for a full year. We thought it was totally normal.
That's funny.
Yeah, we just kind of like bought a van and went for it, like kind of the old school movie style, It was fun. It was really fun.
When you signed the publishing deal, was it to write for other artists or to pitch songs? Because there's kind of like a couple paths you can take with the publishing thing.
I'll be honest, I did not even know that writing for other people was a thing when I signed that deal. It took me a long time to even like get into that world, which I'm honestly no longer really a part of. But
well, yeah, you have success with your stuff. But I was just curious, like if they sign you on, like, oh hey, maybe,
yeah, no, like, that was honestly like that was a time, like you probably remember this time, but like when like Mumford and Son was breaking, and like Dawes, Deer Tick, like that, there was like a real folk push. And not that we weren't good, because I think we were, but that helped us where we were like, I think our songs were like, oh, this could be really marketable. Did it work out that way? Maybe not. But we had a blast,
So Eddie, so you joined this band, and were you had, I think you told me last time you had just graduated from college, and you had joined the band. And what did you go to school for? Like, were you kind of pursuing a career elsewhere, and then were like, oh, I'd rather do this? I mean, you said that you're kind of felt bad for your buddy, and then you realized like, this is cool.
Yeah. So music was always kind of like, part of my world, part of my studies. But my focus when I graduated was on systems engineering. So I was looking kind of in the tech world. And at that time, like mid-year of my senior year, I was applying to a bunch of different places. And a lot of the positions were kind of in things that I really had no interest in doing.
Mm.
Like there was a lot of defense work and systems engineering and that kind of stuff, which, you know, for me personally is not what I wanted to focus on. So after going through that process, I was like, fuck it, I'm going to try to find my way into this band. So yeah, so I definitely did really weasel my way into that one, but it was fun. It's you know, because now we're at what it's been. That band was over 10 years ago now.
Wow.
So our life in music has been pretty long, so it's hard not to reflect, especially when we're on the cusp of releasing our next record, on the past and all that stuff. And it's very much like, I feel like our life in music is the same trajectory in a lot of ways as like a young child or an animal, where the first few years are just like chaos and fun and crazy and like running around and having no idea what you're doing. And then middle age is young adulthood, thinking like you have it figured out, then having that all crushed down. Now we're old men where just kind of feels like everything comes and goes as it does. And you know, we're just happy to be here, happy to have rode all those ups and downs and ended up on the other side. So
Very cool. Definitely. So Tim, I believe you said, I think, didn't Handsome Ghost kind of start off as just you and doing like a solo thing after the band had broke up?
Yeah, it was just me at the beginning. It was like as great as the folk band was, it was you know, it was folk, so it was relatively straight ahead in terms of what we could do
Mhm.
on the recording, instrumentation, whatnot. So I think, and I was getting really into just like traditional pop music at that point, uh, which I still am sort of, but so I think it goes to experiment with different sounds and different approach, and you know, kind of have everything at your disposal.
Mhm.
I did that solo for a bit. Eddie initially was just on the road as a touring member of the band, and you know, we were friends at that point, but not like we are now. But I think it was just kind of a slow, like, you know, a slow growth of trust musically, and then just, you know, life wise. And I think Eddie, you know, I'll talk about you like you're not here, but I think, you know, like being in a band for as long as we have, there's super high highs, but there are tough times too. So you kind of, it's nice to have someone who's got your back and to know that, you know, I've got his back too. So it's just kind of been like a nice growth into a partnership versus like, oh, like it's my band and you're playing in it, you know?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
that, I mean, that makes total sense. But it just, I was, yeah, because you said that it started out as you, and then yeah, like Eddie joined up with you. But you talked about how, and I didn't follow up with you on this when you mentioned the first interview. That's why I'm curious. Is you mentioned how you know Handsome Ghost had like your first little boost, and then you know started getting the Eddie involved. Like, what was that boost? Like, what kind of first happened to start the project kind of moving?
Like how we kind of got off the ground, you mean?
Yeah, yeah. Or even how you kind of got off the ground and realized, okay, I need to hire a touring band, or I need to hire
Yeah.
instruments.
Well, I did between when the folk band broke up, I moved to Brooklyn just for like a summer, just summer sublet. And I wrote a bunch of demos with no real plan. I sent a couple of those demos to, I don't know, maybe a couple of people that I kind of knew in the music industry, and um, kind of linked up with this a manager, former manager now, but he kind of got us going. Put us in contact with you know, people who liked the music. I think at the very beginning it was I don't know, it's tough to talk about your own music, but I think it was pretty different
Hmm.
sonically, to have kind of, you know, the acoustic guitar and the kind of traditional like folk core, and then have all this electronic stuff around it.
Yeah, definitely.
But so we got a good response. I think people were like, "Oh, this is fresh and new." And to be truthful, that was we got really lucky with some Spotify support, where it was like, that was when Spotify was kind of just becoming the like giant it is.
Mhm.
And we just got like some exposure that I didn't expect, where that just the first song of ours kind of got like whatever, some billion plays. And I don't know, we just got a lot of eyes. You know, it's all about, I feel like we've missed out on a lot of breaks, but we've gotten some breaks too. It's just how it goes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because were did you already have Steps out? Like when you, because you put it on, just obviously Blood Stutter was the first one you put out, and it's got a
Yeah.
ton of streams, obviously. So you put that as a single, and then did you already have that first EP like ready to go at that point? Or did that kind of spark everything to be like, oh, I should
It,
record a record, or was
I
Eddie
had,
involved at that point?
well, was that pre you, Eddie?
Mhm.
Kind of. I think Eddie was just kind of coming into the fold at that point. I had all the demos for those songs done. It was kind of a shame, honestly, but we recorded, or I recorded with this great producer up in Vermont, which I feel like is the last place you'd expect to hear songs that sound like that.
Sure.
But we did it. We made an EP, and then we put out Blood Stutter, got some like good, that went well, and we ended up going out to LA and re-recording the EP, which
Oh,
I don't know if I regret that or not. I think I do.
interesting.
Like no one's fault, but I think that's one of the, another, like, I'm being all reflective, but that's another like thing you learn where it's like, I probably like should have just stuck to my guns there. Because we re-recorded everything, to kind of, I don't even know what the goal was. Just like get things sounding different or maybe more professional. I don't know. But I think we it sounds great. I'm super proud of that EP, but it
Yeah.
shifted a little bit, you know. But I guess long story short, everything was good to go, but it got held up because we had to go back and re-record.
So the version of Blood Sutter that's on the EP is different than the first one that you put out. That's interesting, since
Yep.
it had
And we
such
ended
a
up leading
mass.
first one. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like,
Yeah.
the massive, response to it, to have them be like, I know that's doing awesome, but let's go in and re-record
Yeah.
all of the other ones. Um,
Yeah. I think their heart was in the right place and it makes sense.
sure.
But I think it just lost a little touch of, there's a difference between like people who are like super invested in the project, and then, not that the guys who we worked on it with, they were incredibly talented, but they're like pros, you know.
Right.
Not a dig, but just a different perspective.
Mhm. No, 100%. Yeah, since I moved to Nashville, I'll notice that there'll be guys that are just, like, get hired on to play on records, and
Hmm.
that's just their gig. Like, "Okay, I played guitar on this," or, "Yeah, I
Right.
did the guitars on this." But if you have people that are, like, fully invested in everything with the album, I think, or the EP or whatever, it probably changes quite a bit.
No doubt. I mean,
Um
it's particularly in Nashville. Like, I feel like those guys rip. Like, talent in that city is insane. You know.
It's wild, like, and when I moved here, I thought I was moving to, like, a country cowboy town, but it's
Yeah.
everything here. It's wild.
No doubt. It's a good city.
Um, so yeah, I mean, and then obviously you have another big, other big songs off of the Brilliant Glow, which came out. I mean, it wasn't like that all happened, and were you kind of like, is this next one gonna do the same, or was that even a thought in your mind?
Like whether would the next
Like
song be
streaming
successful?
numbers, yeah. Like,
Yeah, man. I
will
mean,
this be
no doubt.
successful?
I definitely thought about that. I think I think at that point, again, to Eddie's point, like having now done it for so long, you've got these like different chapters in the story of the band. But at that point, it was like we had the success with Blood Stutter, so the band leaned like super pop. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think the powers that be were like, this is an opportunity for this to be like a legitimate pop band, which again, in hindsight, probably a mistake. Uh, but like some of those songs on Brilliant Glow are wicked pop. Um, Still like him, but yeah, those were like, I think, done with um the hope of like breaking through like mainstream, you know,
Hmm.
which is fine. Nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that.
And like then going when Eddie, when did you start like kind of when did you both start collaborating on the songs and like the recording process? Was it around that time?
Yeah, I think it was towards the tail end of Brilliant Glow. Like I'd been kind of on the fringes to that point of like, my sensibilities. I love pop music too, but they were lean kind of a different direction. And I was a big fan of those earlier recordings of the Handsome Ghost project, where it was like, heavy auto tune and not being ashamed of that, or just like taking kind of interesting risks in that way. And so, yeah, it's after the Brilliant Glow happened, I think we are just like, let's try recording something together. So we did, I think the first track that we did together was that Postal Service cover. And that kind of got us turning away from the pop world and more towards what Welcome Back ended up being, which was kind of like maybe a middle ground there.
Yeah, I was gonna say
so
the band changed sonically in that out on that record. Was that kind of the vibe behind Welcome Back? Was it like, oh, and we're kind of going back to the older sound of the band, or that has nothing to do with it? I'm just making up conspiracies.
Yeah, I think that was part of it. Yeah, at that point, I think it was whether it was intentional or not, I honestly can't really say. I think there was kind of like a sonic world that all the EPs and then the earlier recordings lived in, like in different places. And instead of having like a very specific vision to begin, it was kind of like, all those textures and sounds were part of, the tool bag at that point. So there was a push to kind of like bring back a lot more acoustic guitar into that, into Welcome Back. But we also kept a bunch of like the synthy stuff that came from the, both sides of it, whether it was the early recordings or the like Steps EP and Brilliant Glow stuff.
And then you ended up doing a full acoustic versions of that record too, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then going like last time I spoke to you guys, like you said you had still some more or some still morning. And was that something that you had recorded prior to the pandemic? Or I mean, it was so early on kind of in that world and that space, and you didn't have the album out yet. Tell me about that, just that record, and then I want to move on to what you guys have been up to in the past 3 years here.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. Yeah, I honestly can't remember, Eddie. What was the timeline? Like, I know we were working during the pandemic, but we were. I want to say the majority of it was done prior to that.
Yeah, it was pretty much done before the pandemic, and we had at that point disappeared for a while, and that Some Still Morning, I think, started off initially as like a pretty big struggle, trying to get what we were doing right and get the sound right and get the theme right for the record and all that stuff. And we ended up disappearing for a long time. Finally, we had these recordings ready to share. And then as soon as we started releasing was when the pandemic started. So we kind of ended up releasing a lot of that. It was recorded before the pandemic, but throughout. So
yeah, to kind of come back and you said you guys went away for a little bit, and then to kind of come back and get things going, and then to have the pandemic just shut it all down. I can't even imagine what that was like.
Brutal. We did a little tour like right after we finished recording. I think this was prior. I don't think we had any music out or anything from Some Still Morning, but we did a little tour, like a baby tour with this band we really like, Symbol.
Yeah, I know Symbol.
Yeah, good band. But we were like, all right, we'll do this like little tour to kind of get back into shape, and then we'll hit the road. And that was like right before everything was like, okay, never mind, I guess we won't ever tour again, ever.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I mean, to have those songs and then like obviously not be able to tour them like during the lockdown piece of the pandemic, were you guys working on, I know you put out an EP, what, this year, earlier this year? Were those songs that, and did any of that come out of that time period, or were you writing or working on new music during the pandemic, or what were you guys up to at that point? I mean, obviously not a lot was going on.
Yeah, this new record, and including the EP, it kind of came about, I think, to be honest, I think at that point when we had put out Some Snow Morning, prior to that, we were kind of like, let's see how this record does and see if we're still excited about music after it, and reevaluate whether or not there's like another record in the books for Handsome Ghost. And then the pandemic happened while we were releasing it. So it's like, oh shit. Like part of this record that I was really excited about was, because that's very much a headphones record. It's very like intimate and close. Really excited about bringing that into the live environment with the drummer and seeing how it shifted everything and all that stuff. And it just kind of felt like the release was at a time where it didn't really get a fair shake, which, it is what it is. But so when we first started recording again, it was like, essentially like, let's extend the Some Snow Morning release cycle by putting out more songs and just like stringing them out. But once we got into the studio, it kind of felt like this isn't what we want to do. Like, if we're gonna get back into the studio, instead of like rehashing or recreating what we were trying to do with Some Snow Morning, extending that, like, let's just do it right. So we stopped recording and took a little break. And I think Tim's always writing songs. He's very, very prolific. And by the time we were ready to get back into the studio, we had like another 1,000 options to choose from. So
wow. So all of these, the songs that came off the recent EP and then even this upcoming album, they were all kind of together around the same time. Is that right?
Yeah, and this record was the first one that we did where we weren't living together, and also like living steps away from the studio, because it was in the place that we're living.
Oh wow.
And at that point, I was kind of we would do like 1 week working on songs, like just kind of in the evenings, and then 2 or 3 weeks off. So there's a lot more time in between to think about things, I think, than we've really allowed ourselves, and also time to not think about things, like just living our lives, instead of just like waking up, getting to work, going to sleep, waking up, getting to work, and that kind of stuff. So the process was a little different on this one.
Is that speaking to the EP as well? Or
Mhm.
just the album? Oh wow. Okay. So when you put out the most recent EP, you guys weren't living together either at that point?
Mhm.
The
Okay.
EP, like truthfully, like the EP, like we had the record done, and we chose to release an EP followed by the record, but they're all kind of in one like bunch, like that was
Oh,
one
sure. Okay.
process.
So
Yeah.
was it difficult then to navigate kind of what songs you wanted to be on the EP versus the album, or did you have the album done and we're like, oh, we have these songs, like these kind of all sonically go together, let's put them on this EP?
That's a really good question. Eddie?
Um, if we're to be 100% honest, like the concept of an album to us is still very important. I know that's kind of like a dying thing these days.
I love that about your band, to be honest. No
Yeah,
one's doing it
Okay.
anymore
just
unless
having
you're
a piece of
Taylor Swift or something.
yeah.
Taylor Swift and Handsome Ghost. That's it.
Yeah. So when we did the record, it was like we had all the transitions and how songs moved into each other, and like kind of the ebb and flow of the energy and stuff all set. And then once we were planning to release the record, honestly, like just our manager and our label was suggesting that we do an EP to kind of still have the record that we wanted, but have the release cadence kind of match what like modern music business dictates.
Sure.
So the EP just kind of came together, honestly, for that reason.
So
it was
yeah,
like-
so you had the album and you're like, well, we want to put the whole album out. So we have other songs, we should just put them out. And yeah, kind of like the single every so often,
Yeah.
escape that's going on now with To the Place Where We Met Last.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
kind of did the we were talking about this a couple weeks ago, Eddie and I, but like, there's a fine line, I feel like, between like, standing your ground on what's important to you and your art, and then being like defiant or like difficult to work with. So I feel like there are times that we will put our foot down and be like, we don't want to do that. And our label Nettwerk's been like really cool and understanding of like our vision. But in this case, they were like, we think it would be we think it'd be a good idea to go with an EP, still have your album, but we'll do an EP first. And we said, cool. Like, sure, all right.
And I think the songs that ended up on the EP were kind of in line with the order that we wanted to string the songs out anyway. So
yeah, it made sense.
Yeah.
That's cool. But the album, the self-titled album is coming out in a couple months, right? Or August, late August. And the most recent song is Like You Lost Your Mind. And tell me, like, what was putting that song out, why did you guys choose that as the initial single?
I mean, I guess we thought it was a strong song, or maybe we have some of the songs on the record that I think are going to take a few listens to really get, which is a lot to ask. I think "Lost Your Mind" is hopefully like you get it right away.
It's a great song.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that was one of the tracks we identified early on. Like, this is something we're really, really excited about. And I think we always kind of had it earmarked as, one of our lead songs. And so it kind of just made sense with announcing the album. The fact that it's self-titled is important to us. And we're like, let's go with "Lost Your Mind" as our kind of, re-entrance, if you will. Although we've been back for a bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I love that you guys just speaking to the fact that you're doing an album. I think there's something so cool about being able to put a whole thing on and listening to it. And you're talking about the transitions and all that, because I think I come from radio and like radio programming. Like, there's a way to do it and to make it. There's a reason why wherever Like You Lost Your Mind will land as far as the album track goes. There's a specific reason why you placed it there. And I just find that like that's such a cool thing. Is that must be a pretty hard thing to do when you have a batch of songs, and then you're like, okay, how do we where does number one go versus the seventh song versus the third song? Like, is that something that you guys, I would imagine you have to spend quite a lot of time just trying to figure that out, or was it like kind of working out as you were recording the songs? Did you kind of know?
I feel like that's like maybe the most fun part of the whole process, like,
Yeah.
when all the hard work's done and the everything is tracked and mixed, and you kind of like you're left with your record. I feel like figuring out how you want it to go is like a nice chore. It's a good chore. But I think we kind of had an idea. Like, we had some back and forth, Eddie, but usually we're on the same page with that stuff, right? We've never ever been like, what? Like,
yeah, a lot of these things I trust Tim on too. So if we're disagreeing on something, I'll usually defer to him. Usually, is that true? I don't know. I'm pretty stubborn. But
yeah.
As far as the album flows go, like we have the luxury of being able to record ourselves. So when we're doing it a lot of the times we'll get songs to like, especially earlier on in the recordings, we'll get them to like 50%. And then as we work on other songs and new ideas or textures or tones or whatever enter the picture, we'll bring them back to the earlier songs that we recorded and see if there's ways that we could kind of like build cohesion by sharing tones or, you know, certain like techniques or whatever. So when we're doing that towards the end, we usually have like, we need a song that's like, you know, a little bit more down tempo. And so that sometimes helps drive like, let's do this song for the record, as opposed to other songs. 'Cause like I said, Tim has a ton of songs that we could choose from. So when it comes down to like the final choices for the record, it's either like, ooh, we just really love this song, or like we need something kind of driving, or we need something a little down tempo, or we want something that fits this feeling. And then that kind of, it kind of like comes together all at once in a way.
And you just mentioned how you guys do all the recording yourselves.
Mhm.
And have you done that on throughout all of the records, minus maybe the one that Tim was talking about having to go re-record or do the first version of it?
Yeah, ever since Eddie's been involved, that was, I think that's one of the major, one of the reasons Eddie's an asset is, you know, we can record ourselves and it sounds good. It sounds pro.
Mm-hmm.
I think we may have talked about this last time, but it's a blessing in that we can take our time and get it right and talk, and we're not on the clock, but we're also not on the clock. So it's like, you know, we can, I think we've now learned like, we don't want to obsess over every little thing just because we can. But it's a luxury to be like, should we hit the studio? Yeah. Like, you know, so yeah, that's
Yeah, I think last time we touched on the overproducing, like, because if you have time, especially during the pandemic, a lot of artists would sit and listen to the songs a million times, like, I want to tweak this little note, or it's like, do you have to
getting a
put the whole
headache
thing
just thinking about
away?
it.
Yeah. Just like, okay, I got to put this thing away for a week and come back and listen to it. And, and maybe I won't hear the same thing, or it'll whatever go through. Yeah, because I can imagine that getting pretty. I would do it. I mean, I do it with like video editing. I'll like obsess over one thing. My wife will watch it. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, no, there's one frame here that was messed up. You're like, what?
Yeah, I actually just the next song we're putting out in early June. It's one of my favorites, and there's one part where I was like, I have no idea how we did that. So I had to go back and listen to it actually this morning. And I found all these parts that I had added at the very end and decided against. Because usually when we're sending stuff to mastering, I'll delete everything that's muted and have only like the things that we're going to send through.
Sure.
So for this record, like kind of rewinding a little bit, we had mixed it all, finished it, and then we sent it to a mastering engineer who we love, and had it mastered, and it was completely done. And then this was the first project that we worked on where Nettwerk was involved. They were kind of like, let's revisit the mixes, which was cool. It was really good feedback on the mixes, and it kind of like pushed the songs in a little different way, which was nice. But during that process, while I was mixing it, it was I guess kind of part of the remixing was having the vocals be a little bit more front and center, how they are right now. The previous versions were, I think, a little bit more like band soundy.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we kind of like had to hug the middle ground there. But when we're remixing it in that mindset, it was like, oh shit, now I kind of want to add like a bass here to kind of fill out this. And it just, looking through the session this morning, was like, wow, I auditioned a bunch of stuff that just like, it was a waste of so much time. And all of it's muted and it's just kind of sitting in the back. And
I was gonna ask you, did you add anything after the fact when they had to go remix it? Did any of it land on the album?
Yeah, there are like some layers that ended up coming through. Like there's some textures in Neptune that were kind of like it was supposed to be a little bit of a wash initially, but then when we were going for a little cleaner mixes, it's like you know, kind of layering it with like more concise tones. So there's a little bit more like electric guitar layered with synth sounds in the final version, because in the mix it just didn't feel right to kind of shift from, you know, kind of things blending together to having things be a little bit more in their own world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I just have a quick question about you learning to record. Like, was that something you've always been interested in doing? I mean, to go and be like, yeah, I can record and do this, produce this album. Like, was that something that you had done prior to this band?
Like personal stuff, which I'll never
Okay.
release.
But it's still
But
you had the idea, or you knew what obviously you know what you're doing. But I
yeah,
was just curious, like, how did you get into that
mhm.
world?
A lot of it was just out of necessity of at a certain point, it's like I could spend money on this or I could spend money on that. And it was a gamble that I could watch enough YouTube videos to figure it out.
That's cool. Very, very cool. Well, you have a big tour coming up too to support the record, at least in the UK.
Yeah, pretty psyched. It's a first for us.
Oh, really? You
Like,
haven't been there
yeah,
to play
never.
before?
It's like the last thing that's kind of been on the bucket list. So I'm pretty psyched. Like I haven't been to really many of those. I mean, I've been to Cleveland 5,000 times, but I've been to like only 2 or 3 of the cities we're gonna be playing. So I'm pumped, you know. I can't
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah. Oh, like it's outside of the US, you mean? Like you've been
I
to
mean,
Cleveland
like we've toured throughout the US
like
so
a
many times.
bunch of
That's not
times,
not supposed
obviously.
to be a knock on Cleveland. I love
No,
Cleveland,
no,
but
no.
we
It's one of
My
our
family's
favorite
from
cities.
Cleveland,
yeah.
and you can knock on them.
No,
We just
we love Cleveland.
I'm just kidding.
yeah, I do
But
like Cleveland. No,
Yeah.
we've done the US so many times, and we've never had the opportunity to go to Europe. So when it came through, it was like just like real genuine excitement, you know. We like kind of felt like the early days we were like, whoa, like that's gonna be fun, you
that's
know.
huge. I mean, to
Yeah,
tour a totally different part of the world. I mean, is there
it was
anyone, or I'm
crazy.
sure all of them, but is there any specific ones that you saw? You're like, hell yeah, I can't believe you have to play London or wherever.
For me, it's like the cliche, but I'm looking forward to playing in Paris. I've been to Paris, but it's just one of those like one of those funny like, you know, my mom's excited. She's like, "Oh, we're playing in Paris." Like, yeah, man, we're like a big band. I don't know, Eddie, if you got one. Munster?
Yeah, wait. I forget. I forget which ones initially kind of stuck out, but my I got married in September of 2022, and we just went on like a little honeymoon to London and Edinburgh. And I realized that I'm kind of like a castle nerd, so I'm just like, I want to see the different castles in Europe. Just
You
like
should
look
be.
at them. I don't know.
That's awesome.
Um,
Did you see the where you guys are playing? Did you go to that venue at all when you were there? Or no, just doing some touristy things,
no, just doing touristy stuff.
Honeymoon stuff.
Yeah.
honeymoon stuff.
Yeah, so it'll be really fun. And it's also it's gonna be such a joy to be able to play with Chris every night.
Yeah.
He's
Good.
his music is just music that I really love, and he's got a record coming out soon too, which I'm really pumped about. And yeah,
Yeah, he's
it should be
good.
fun nights.
It's
That'll be
exciting.
a cool bill.
Very, very cool. Well, I appreciate the both of you coming back on and doing this, especially
Yeah,
now that I
man.
could see you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. This is a pleasure. You know, it's great catching up.
Yeah, you guys are great. I'm gonna ask you the same question I asked you at the end last time. If you have any advice for aspiring artists.
I think I can't remember what I said last time, but I'll keep it short. I
Brilliant.
think if you stick, yeah, there you go.
I'd rather have you not. You're like, well, last time I just said
Yeah.
this. So there we go.
I think if you stick with it long enough, like what I've learned is if you hang around long enough, you like kind of come back to the beginning where you just love it. Like you all the outside stuff of like stress around like making it and mainstream and like that, it just kind of it eventually goes away and you go back to the basics of just like, this is what I love to do. So I feel like if you can kind of get over the hurdles, it just becomes kind of just a really great way to spend a life, you know. That's my words of wisdom. Take
I
it.
love it. Thanks, Tim. What about you, Eddie?
I think one thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently as we reflect is about how, like, when we were first starting music and before we like dove into music as a full-time pursuit, it's like I built a lot of my identity around music and my ideas of like self-worth and all of that stuff. And when you do that, it's really hard not to let like the downs get to you, and it's hard not to let the ups really like, you know, feel too extreme. So it is kind of weird, but like music is obviously important to my life, but it's not life. So it's nice to know that it's just like a part of who you are and a part of what you do. And when you kind of accept that, it's like, you know, we do it because we love it. We do it because we have something to say, but it's not that important. Like, as long as you love doing it, that's all that matters. Like, all the other stuff is, you know, things that you have to focus on if you're trying to build a career out of music, especially in these times. But you know, it's just a piece of your life. Like, just enjoy it as best as you can. Which is hard to actually live out sometimes. Like, I get real grumpy sometimes, and whatever, but you know, that's life.
Bringing it backward.